it's safer to push record and have it recorded than have to repeat what it is that I was saying. So, um, for context, I loaned my book, Introduction to Ecological Psychology, out to another coach, and they read a couple of chapters and said, it's too dense. I don't have the time and energy to read this. They've got a couple of kids and they work and they've got a wife and like they are busy. I think that they could find time, but it's one of those things. Where do you focus your energy? Where do you prioritize? And reading an Introduction to Ecological Psychology textbook wasn't high up on their priority list, which is understandable. So I got the book back. And I kind of requested the book back as well because the video essay that I have up on YouTube on Coach Danny for Introduction to Ecological Psychology is over 2 hours long. It's a lecture, and again, you need to prioritize a good chunk of your time over multiple days to really grasp what it is that I'm talking about.
And quite frankly, as someone who recently wrote an article that was designed to be constrained to a normal size article, not an ecological psychology related article where I need to spend 3 paragraphs just explaining the fundamentals. Your video and a couple of your articles were about the only thing I could link to on a separate page because I'm trying to build up a resource on my own site of like really good places to start. And obviously, Introduction to Ecological Psychology, there is the paper that I think can't
The
remember the name
paper,
of the person.
there's a
Yeah,
lot of them.
there was a specific paper designed to introduce ecological psychology. It was the one
Oh,
that
Ten
was
Commandments.
no, I don't think it was that one. It was it
Hmm.
was the one titled Ecological Psychology. Um,
There's like 14 books that I know of
I
titled that.
realized that.
Like Perception and
Elements in
Sensation.
Perception paper.
Who are the authors?
Sugendo Ortin, M, and Raja V.
Oh, Roger. Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Vicente.
Yes. I'm not even gonna try.
Well, you know Vicente because he was
Yeah, I
in
do.
Berlin.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's another reason why I used. But
yeah. Okay. Oh, is that the 40-page book? No, the 90-page book. Sorry.
yes,
Yeah, the 90-page book. Yes, yes. I'm currently reading through that again.
because it's a good it's a nice
It's got history.
gentle-ish history of what it is and where it's come from. I like it as
I
a
mean,
starting point.
but it's still a 90-page book.
I know, I'm trying. I was like, okay, how could I bring people in? Okay, there's the 3 hour video by Danny.
Two.
Two, oh, is it two?
Add an
Okay, cool.
hour. Yeah, it feels like three though.
It does feel like three. It is as dense as 3 hours.
I mean, it is an entire academic textbook.
It is an entire academic text. Then we have the entire academic textbook, and I'm like, you
That's
should
about
read
400
this.
pages.
Yeah, which it feels like 1,200 pages as you go through.
I think I've got because the cognitive psychology book is 930. So yeah. But yeah, I guess going back to reasons why, context, what we just discussed is basically my struggle-ish with ecological psychology at the moment is that to get into it, you either need to have a lot of upfront understanding or experience with the content, or you've got to throw yourself in head first. There aren't many sort of like clips and nice little introduction videos to give you a taste or exposure. It's just, hey, here's some affordances and some constraints and some bifurcations that happen in the visual optics with your perception going through the body because we're perceiving over long time scales. You're like, sorry, what in the world are you talking about? Uh, and so what I wanted to do on the Coach Danny channel is talk about ecological psychology from a coach's perspective. I don't know whether you've seen many of the videos, but I'm trying to build up a library of videos that I can refer back to that try and bring in some practical application from the psychology rather than just saying, hey, instead of indirectly perceiving, I think we directly perceive, and then talking
Yeah,
about retinal images. Well, that's great for those that are interested in perception or specifically visual perception. But if you're not specifically, if you're not working in a visual perception field, the biggest question is going to be, so what? Like, why
yeah,
do I care?
yeah. That is something that I've been thinking about a lot because, of course, I'm I'm starting to try and write some articles again. And one of the first things was I introduced the science to a friend of mine, and they were like, "You have never spoken about any of this before." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, because it's kind of just there. There's no point, there's no point to talk about it." And then and their reaction was, "No, you need to talk about it." I'm like, "Yeah, but you understand the problem with me doing that." Link to another page. I'm like, "Yeah, I repeat the question." I'm currently in the process of building what I'm calling a related rabbit hole page just on ecological psychology. I am already regretting it. I should have broken it down further. But then how do
Yes.
you break it down further? Where do you break it down? Like where do you chunk it?
Chunk, chunk,
Oh yeah,
chunk.
obviously. We chunk, don't we? You know?
Yeah, yes. Not chunk as used in cognitive psychology when we're chunking schemas together for working memory. We're talking chunking as in selecting a start and end point for a specific measure.
Yes.
And this is something inside of the Discord. I don't know whether you saw, there was a conversation I was having with someone about well, various things, but the generative models described by Carl Friston and those in free energy principles and active inference. And we were discussing the back and forth with terminology and how useful it could be. And this is something I do quite a lot when I'm thinking about what I'm typing and what I'm sending and the messages that I'm using, but also messages that other people send. Very simply put, what is the point of this message? Like, what is, to use an ecological term, what's the intention here? What
Mm.
is the desired intention for this behavior? I've seen a couple of messages come into the Discord and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, what is their intention here? To share lots of information, but why? What's the point? What is the end goal of this thing? If it's to make me buy this person's course, it's not going to work because I disagree with it. If it's to share some ideas, great. What do you want me to do with that? Do you want me to critique it? Do you want me to share my thoughts on it? Do you want me to share a different opinion from it? Like, I need a question or some guidance as to where to go because it's open. It's completely
Yeah.
open. And so when I think about the content that goes out about ecological psychology, academic articles have multiple intentions. The most obvious one is to keep themselves employed because they need to publish articles, which, unfortunately, because of the way the academic system works, doesn't necessarily help the readers. Because it now means you have a long lasting conversation that potentially is going over 3, 4 years with outdated information in the first 2 or 3 articles because it's been so long since things were published, and you're looking at the conversation going, I thought we were past this. But the academic world hasn't passed it through publishing,
Mm.
and the academic world through testing are still actually pending, which is why there's such a lag, a big gap, excuse me, gap between theory and practice. And my target for the Coach Danny channel was to try and reduce that gap. And I wanted to get back to doing some simpler being shorter because the time constraint, I think, adds in enough constraints to reduce the complexity of terminology I need to use, or I can use, I am afforded to use,
Mm.
but also it makes it more consumable,
Yeah.
which I feel affords watchability.
Yeah.
The timestamp 2 hours, if someone sees that video, would scare some people. Video essays get viewed by certain types of people.
Right.
Yes, both of us.
I think I watched a 2 hour video on. Oh, there was two 2 hour videos I watched recently. One was on about how time travel is, and like in video games, how time travel is horror.
Okay. Okay. What was the other one?
The other one was related to loss.
Right. I'm going to ask you a really odd question now. What type of memory was that?
Type of memory.
Was it
Um,
procedural? Was it declarative? Was it episodic?
I thought about it. I was using the information available to me. through this conversation and linked it back when you said, um,
I asked you a question.
yeah, when you, yeah, when you asked what videos they were, I was already thinking of them at that point in time because I was remembering them, because I was remembering that there's another one. I was doing it. That's why. I'm not putting a fucking label down. It's so fucking, I'm so fucking tired of labels at the moment.
The reason I asked that was I was watching a conversation between Julia and a person who I can't remember the name of. It's a video interview webinar kind of thing on YouTube. It's got like 200 views, but most of the videos I watch on YouTube have like 300 views because they're academics lecturing and eating the microphone as they're talking. And towards the end of the conversation, the person that was talking with Julia, like I say, I don't know what it was pitched as, so I don't want to say interview, uh, mentioned something that I found interesting. They come from an enacted, embedded profession, or maybe enacted, embodied. I can't remember. Two of the four E's, not extended. It was certainly enacted in something else. And they said that ecological psychology doesn't separate all of the fields, it just is a field. And Julia agreed, and they discussed this briefly. And for me, it's why I like ecological psychology. Because when I
Mm.
asked you that question, is it declarative? Is it procedural? Is it episodic? Is it any of these other types of memory that people have tried to explain? We can just say, I was perceiving the information from
This is the exciting
experiences.
thing because one of the constraints with the article that I recently wrote around executive dysfunction and how it just doesn't really exist. Um, you the face is so fascinating. Well, it's
What
exactly the
face? I
point.
don't know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
it's it's a subtle expression around executive dysfunction and how it just does not exist. Um,
Everything
it was very
exists. It's a
yeah.
social construct.
Well, yeah, obviously, but it doesn't have to. Um, it was really hard at first to not just put everything because fundamentally underpinning the whole belief of that like idea is ecological psychology.
Sorry,
Like
rewind.
the entire like underpinning the kind of evidence underpinning everything that I'm saying in that article is ecologically based. Like
Okay, yeah, I'm following.
it is fully ecologically based. So I could make a probably an essay's length article just talking about that. But in the end, what I was able to do is explain it through experience. Crazy, right?
Yeah, yes. When I said rewind, I was reflecting whilst listening. I was in two different times. Wow. Uh, because I said
But it's
rewind.
linear, isn't it? No, 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 we're linear.
Time always move forwards. But that's exactly what I started thinking about. I said, wait, rewind. Are you rewinding though? No, because you don't go backwards in time, you're going forwards in time. So you were doing the opposite of what I asked you to do. I was like, language is cool.
Yeah.
I was like, rewind. So you went forwards and repeated what you'd said in the measurable past from the measures that we'd picked.
Yes.
Both of us knew what I meant, which was what's interesting. I said rewind, but you still went forwards.
That's so cool.
So you did the opposite of what I asked you to do. And I'm
So
like,
cool.
that's why I stopped. I was thinking, that's really cool. I think I might note that down somewhere. You can carry on talking about your experience. I'm just going to note that down as a short.
And it was very interesting because as I continue, so that one of the constraints that I had for the article was to keep the science to a paragraph. I mean,
I
I
was
broke that.
one paragraph.
Obviously. Yeah, one paragraph. I could make it a long paragraph. Ended up being two paragraphs. But I moved very quickly into experience because when we move into experience, it is so much easier. it affords us to understand it quicker. Like it's like here is an experience. Ah, yes, that's an experience. I know that experience. That resonates with me. What you're saying actually makes sense. I'm like, I know. That's the point.
What I find interesting in the conversations that I'm having at the moment with some people in the Discord is that the language I'm using is ecological psychology. It's ECOD language. It's very simplified. You can have a look. Anyone listening could obviously have a look because it's on the Discord. But you can have a look afterwards, or maybe through this. And the questions that I was getting related to assumptions from cognitive psychology, and it's the plight of the three-paragraph explanation of what ecological psychology is whenever someone writes an article. Like, for context, if you write an article on cognitive psychology, you can start with the assumption that everyone has a similar meaning behind perceiving or perception and memory and the assumptions of linear causality or maybe non-linear causality, but still using something that is from A to B to C to D. And then the other assumptions of the central executive and it being involved in or central executive and executive function, whether it's dysfunctional or functional, and representations in the brain. These are all assumptions that people go into a cognitive psychology paper or cognitive science paper. But if you're coming from ecological psychology, you need to spend like a third of the words that you have explaining that this is not what I'm talking about. This is not what I'm saying. I am not describing it like this. And I'm finding that a lot in this Discord conversation because my fundamental assumptions are so drastically different from these people that I'm speaking to, which isn't a bad thing, it's not a good thing, it's just a difference. That the words I'm using are very simple. They are quite literally direct. What I say is what I mean. Like the exp like trying to think of a tangible example. So, practice design. Ecological psychology, I think I used ecological dynamics when I was typing it, has helped me design practice better. And they added lots of other words there. And they said, does this mean this? Does this mean that? Are you saying? And they brought in automatic. And I'm like, no, I'm not talking about automatic. The practice design, what I designed to do to practice was better. It allowed me to pay attention to and understand my intentions of my behavior, and I could do that more effectively because of the design I created, like the practice. And they kept bringing in ideas from, uh, like I say, being automatic or paying attention to the correct information and learning things faster and things being stored in memory. And it was it was interesting to see the assumptions come out. They hadn't explicitly said I'm a cognitive psychologist,
Mm,
but just with the words they were using to describe their understanding of the conversation helped me understand that they were coming from cognitive psychology, which is where I think that, oh, you can mix and match cognitive psychology and ecological psychology. I think that experience there epitomizes my struggle.
mm,
If I can see the assumptions that you're using to rationalize your explanation of the way that humans interact with the world through the language you're using and the descriptions you're using, there must be an obvious difference. Because the behaviors that we do and choose to use moving forwards are therefore different. If you think something is stored in memory and is now automatic, and you no longer need to practice XYZ thing because of that assumption, your behaviors moving forwards are drastically different to mine, which would be to practice the same thing because there is repetition without repetition, so I'm still using the same practice design. But there will be inherent variability, especially as a novice learner learning whatever the topic is. And so the variability adds the inherent variability from my own action capabilities and skill and competency with education of attention and intention calibrating my skill. All of that together adds enough variability for me not needing to change the practice design yet. That is ecological psychology. cognitive psychology and even with the generative models can use that. Some people do use those ideas, but there's still differences, and those differences are very difficult to explain. When people say, "Oh, what's the difference between this and that?" It's very difficult to explain those differences because it sounds annoying. It depends on the context because the relationship between the organism and environment. And that's where I find myself bashing my head against the wall and then remembering we're all at different stages of learning
Yeah.
because we're ongoing perceiving systems, dynamical systems, complex dynamical systems. Let's just add more words on there with
Yeah.
systems.
Just keep adding words and eventually we'll all be confused.
Yeah, that was my mini lecture of the episode. So now you can have a spiel.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to have a spiel. I very much enjoyed the ADHD, autism, neurodiverse conversation in the
Oh, in
WhatsApp
the
chat.
group. Yes.
I was like, right, hello. I can't
I,
say very much
I
about
think that's
many
the first
things.
time I've seen you engage.
Like it because I had been thinking it was great because it was at the perfect time because I'd already been engaging in it like for myself, and it's been something I've been thinking a lot about because of course I'm like rebranding, marginally changing things around a bit and kind of settling into like what I want to do. And so it just showed up at exactly the right time and I was like, I have thoughts. I have lots of thoughts. I have lots and lots of thoughts relating to all of these things. And most of my thoughts kind of have stemmed down to we just do the thing and let's just do the thing.
Hmm.
Be, because that is and yes, it no, of course it's not that easy, but it also is that easy.
I think it can be that easy.
Yeah, it
So
can be that easy. It can be possible. It's moving away from that feeling of it just never happening. Like in the article that I wrote recently, it was talking around like when you look at executive dysfunction and executive functioning of the mental CEO that's in charge of you that controls everything that you do, it's like, cool, great. What do I do? Do I have to have a meeting with the mental CEO to actually do something? Well, yes, of course you do.
but you can't do
Okay,
that.
but we can't. So how do we do? Is it, oh, you just have to do the thing? Okay, cool. But no, you're talking about something which I cannot communicate with, that I don't have a direct line to, that I have no control over, that basically rules my life. How am I supposed to do the things that I want to do because I am a human who wants to do a thing if I cannot do a thing? If I am being told fundamentally that I cannot operate in my own world? How can I exist if I have no control, if I have no agency? Because a mental model, a conceptual rag bag, which is this is one of my favorite terms I've ever read, ever, in
Was
an
that
academic paper.
where did you get that one from?
That was. Let me get my
Conceptual
article.
ragbag. I mean, yeah, I like the combination of words.
Yeah, well, they weren't mine. I think it was. Oh,
Well, they
it's
probably weren't
actually
the
from a
person that
paper.
you they probably weren't the person that you read them from. Someone had probably said it before.
What am I
But
looking
the source that you found it from, while you're looking that up, something very, very related. There was a video essay that I watched about anti-intellectualism. And the long and short of it was they think that people are not talking deeply enough about topics. And their arguments were based around emotions, and some people are too emotional when we're talking. And I'm thinking, well, this person is explaining their reasoning. Emotions, you can't get rid of them. Emotions are behavior. You can't not behave, otherwise you're dead. So you can't share an opinion without emotions.
badly,
So,
by the way.
sorry,
It was badly, by the way.
badly. Oh, Badley, as in Alan Badley.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Wait, what was he talking about? 'Cause, oh,
Um,
for
it
reference that
was
those don't know,
exploring the
working
central
memory.
executive.
Yeah,
Uh,
because he's the working memory man that most people will know him as working memory man.
yeah,
Him and Hitch, Badley and Hitch.
yeah, yeah. But
See,
he even called it a conceptual rag bag, which I'm just like,
have
what
you have
you're
you
saying?
have you watched their pub conversation, Psychology in the Pub?
I haven't. That sounds fun.
Yeah, so Badley and Hitch, they were in a pub, obviously, in the UK, and they did like a seminar-ish kind of thing with a microphone, and they sort of just chatted about it. And they said that the central executive was a placeholder.
Mm.
Like, it is a placeholder because we don't know what to put there.
I wish we'd talk about that because it's just a placeholder, and it's
Exactly.
just and this is another thing. If we think about what's happening in the world right now, in like the trans communities and all of that, where things are just shit, where things are
I'm stay
awful
out of that. I'm not in that
and
world.
just rotten for people who are trans or who and it's like, oh, they don't exist. Okay, cool. So I am quite happy to say that a trans woman and a trans man don't exist if we get rid of the fact that a man and a woman exists, because they're
Hmm.
all just the same fucking thing. They are all just a label that has been assigned based on a certain selection of ideas of things. So if you want to get rid of trans, then get rid of man and woman, because they're basically, I mean, trans is an adjective, not a noun, but
Hmm.
get rid of all of it then. Why do we
We are
stop?
organisms.
We are organisms who are interacting with the environment. Can we just stick to that then, please? Oh no, because if that happens, then we have agency and can do things.
So, this
Oh,
is
here,
going to be
spicy?
potentially
Cool.
my plan for the Introduction to Ecological Psychology series that I'm going to start
Mm-hmm.
is to obviously have an introduction video to the series, which is what I'm doing with a lot of the other books that I'm putting into videos. When I say series, it's going to be a playlist on YouTube for people to go back to. I have a hair on my nose and it's really annoying. There we go. And sorry, sidetracked. The first video that I want to share, and for context, because I've been working on this for a few weeks, I want to make sure we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, as it were. I mentioned the shorter videos. I've also mentioned the not necessarily simplicity of the information, but I want to be able to
Would
focus,
you say it's the density?
not necessarily, well, maybe, but give a focus. So constrain the language so there is a direct intention rather than it being a lecture of lots of information. Sort of instead of you walking down the street and you having to look through all the windows and work out which shop you want to go in. I'm basically going to put arrows on the floor and say, right, here's the first arrow, go in that shop. But you can just walk straight past that arrow and go to the second shop if you want to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That
Yeah, yeah.
analogy? So you can still eventually, obviously, once the playlist is up, you can still see the whole street, walk down it, and go in wherever. But when you go into the shop, i.e., you start playing the video, at the moment it's very much a hey, here's just tons of stuff on loads of shelves, like an old bookshop. Find a book you want to read. Like, help, please. Like, you need the librarian to maybe help or give you directions, or you go in knowing what you want to look for. YouTube, you don't typically go into a video knowing what you want to look for unless you're looking for something, in which case, most people aren't going to watch it because they're not looking for an answer to an ecological psychology question. So I want to package this bookshop, the video, in a way that more people would be interested. My current thinking is to use Hank Green and psychology and the psychology crash course for two very obvious reasons. One, he's a big popular name on YouTube and online, so it will grab attention that way. And two, I can say that he made mistakes, which adds sensationalism. And those two things are great as clickbait, and it's not wrong, so it's not bad clickbait. What I then want to do once they're in the video is obviously justify the clickbait, which I can do. I've got various clips of Hank saying certain things. I mean, these are 14 years old, bear in mind, and so I will be explicit and say I do agree with a lot of what Hank Green has done, and it's not his fault that he is sharing psychology that is not necessarily wrong, but it's not sharing all of psychology because most courses don't. So that's the packaging part of this video. The content part, which is where I want to direct my question towards you, is the video, to introduce it, ideally summarizes in some way the book. Yeah, precisely. And the things I want people to pay most attention to are the things that are most shocking because they need to be grabbing, they need to be obvious. I don't think me saying that ecological psychology uses direct perception instead of indirect perception using visual haptic or sorry ecological haptics and ecological optics and using the visual array blah 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 blah. No, I don't think that is going to grab lots of people's attention. What I do think may grab people's attention is discussions on the central executive and and executive function. And the way that we would describe memory is different, but also categorization. I am quite happy and I feel quite confident in sharing my opinions on categorization in the way that we use social labels and social constructs in the world. And I can link that quite comfortably with ecological psychology using the terms. How I do that without being um, cancelled would be my question to you. Silence.
Yeah.
I feel like I am fairly diplomatic with the way that I use my words,
Yeah.
but people will still.
I think some people will cancel you no matter what you do or say. So there is very little that you can do about it.
It's avoiding the mass disagreement that I'm
Yeah.
aiming for because people disagree with things that are fact. Flat earthers, for example. So I know there are going to be people that disagree. I'm almost asking for people to disagree because I want to have the conversation.
Mm.
It's it sounds it sounds bad, but I want there to be arguments because it grabs attention. I'm
Mm.
showing I'm on a side and I'm not on another side, which brings attention to the conversation. Attention to the dialogue is effective. Negative attention to the dialogue is what I want to avoid. And that is where I want to be careful about the language I use,
Mm.
sharing the categories and the social constructs.
Mm.
And that's why I want to ask your opinion.
It is something that I had considered a lot when writing what I wrote recently, because and I actually had a comment going when I first read this, I thought you said it was my fault and that I was just lazy. And I'm like, yeah, I can see that because that's the rhetoric that's usually spieled. And it's like, but as I was reading more, I'm like, good. You read more. You kept reading. And I think that's the thing. If they keep watching or reading, you will, they will find information in that will resonate because of the intention. Because the intention is not to flame, drive people away, push people away. It is to communicate an idea. I think that's probably my thoughts.
Okay.
It's hard.
If it was easy, it would have been done before.
Exactly.
Okay. Yes. The interesting question that I still is sort of lingering about this structure of the video is what points to focus on. The central executive
Hmm.
is an obvious one, but I don't know how long it will take me in the video to give a just rationale for my point. I'm guessing to maybe 3 minutes.
Mm.
And I feel because three is one of those numbers that people like, I want to do three things. So, central executive being one, categorization and labels being another. And I think those two relate quite well. What's the third one? Or do I need a third one? When it comes to ecological psychology and the differences in fundamental assumptions and approaches to the way that we describe behaviors in the world.
So the first two, you would be explaining how it's different?
Not necessarily explaining, because I feel like that would come in the, like, for example, the book, the first chapter is the traditional assumptions. The
Yeah.
second chapter is the central executive. So the deeper explanations would be later on in the playlist video series. The first video is more about exposing at a very shallow surface level that there are different ways to think about this, which could mean different things in how we describe what's going on.
So the third thing, if there is a third thing, kind of wraps it up, I would say, and almost introduces the series,
Okay.
I think. Otherwise, it's not, if that already is going to be the end of the video, then depends on how you're measuring
It,
it. But
it'll
like,
emerge when I write it.
yeah, because th those two are pretty big, massive assumptions that people have, and is a massive experience, and especially now with everything happening in the world and how people are feeling and how things are shifting and social media. I have a good friend of mine is looking it all up, and I'm just like, I know, but please don't. Like, if you want to engage in a conversation with me, we're going to be sat for hours. I do not want to do that because I know that I will be here for hours
I don't.
lecturing.
I don't want to spend the time doing this right now. My priorities
Yeah,
are elsewhere.
my priorities are just not just existing for a bit, not spending hours talking about stuff I get paid to do because I do get paid to do that.
So I'm just quickly looking through the chapters in my Obsidian. Assumptions of knowledge, central executive, troubling assumptions, ecological assumptions. I feel like all of that would be not necessarily summarized, but be hinted at when I talk about the central executive.
Yeah,
Organisms as systems, affordances, ecological optics, ecological acoustics, ecological haptics, action and coordination, developing abilities, perceiving and acting with others, thinking, learning, and remembering, all I feel relate to categories and how we describe remembering, perceiving, learning. Because
yeah,
if categorization is action, perception, we are verbing our nouns. I
yeah,
feel like most of those chapters could be hinted at in that section. Would you agree?
yes, yeah,
The last few chapters of the book, application of ecological psychology, dynamical systems, evolution, and self-organization. I feel like self-organization and application could be a washy third point,
yeah.
because self-organization in itself would be implied with the first 2 points. However, explicit explanation of things is certainly useful if you're not predisposed to the ideas. Because education of attention, if you've not experienced these ideas before, you're not going to be educating your attention to self-organization as a concept, because you may not have experienced it enough before. So adding in those linguistic constraints, or potentially linguistic affordances, by mentioning the term self-organization, again brings in potential
I
interest for those that want to explore.
I've had that interest from when I use self-organization. Like their attention is immediate. What? Like that is a very interesting concept. Like that draws the attention. They're like, oh, self-organized. What? Hmm? Like I have had multiple of like clients and people I talk to when I start talking about self-organization, they're like, tell me more. Like that makes sense to me somehow, even though I don't fully understand. What do you like? It pulls people into the conversation quickly because organization is something that, especially in my like world and what I do, is always something being discussed. Is like, how do I organize myself better? Well, you self-organize. Wait, what?
Hmm.
Wait, what?
So while you were speaking, this is why I love these conversations because ideas emerge through conversation because ongoing perception and action. While you were speaking, I could say I reminded myself, but then I never
Mm.
forgot in the first place. So I was perceiving? Um, sorry, a little bit of a dig there. The actually, why am I sorry? I'm not sorry. That was a deliberate dig there. Uh, Self-organization relates to the central executive. You're
Mm.
laughing because you recognize that I
Yeah.
forgot. And so I looked at my notes as a cue because, yeah, ugh, cognitive psychology. Yeah. I can use those words, but as a cognitive psychologist, they would go, but you now have it stored in your head. No, no, specifying information, ongoing perception. Anyway, um, yeah, so the central executive conversation would obviously relate to a person, a thing, an inside out in your head controlling you, which, when related to the verbing your nouns conversation, can be sort of argued and petered out. And then the answer to the problem would be self organization. So I could frame it as 3 points. But
Mm.
the underlying story be, hey, here's a big problem. And here's the suggested solution that we have, self-organization, which goes from chapter 1 all the way through to chapter whatever the last one is, 14, 18, whatever it is. Um, so yeah, I like that idea as a story, and then using Hank Green's face as a marketing ploy. If I use like Eleanor Gibson or James Gibson or Harry Heft, everyone's going to look and go, "There's that old guy, or there's that old woman, or there's that dead person like Kant that did this philosophy thing years ago, or there's Helmholtz, isn't he a physicist? He was, but it was psychology beforehand." Yeah, no, Hank Green, and that's what I'm trying to do with a lot of these other videos with the packaging is to package a story of someone that's noticeable.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
if I put any of those people or any of the other people on a thumbnail, they're going to go, "Who's that?"
Mm.
Even with Hank Green, a lot of people on the internet will go, "Who's that?" If they're not like our age, because you think Crash Course 14 years old. And a lot of the people on Crash Course now, yeah, old. Crash Course now, there's other people that deliver it. So Hank Green's more in the background of Crash Course, and Hank Green's content is like on the Brothers, Vlog Brothers. And SciShow, he presents stuff there, and he's still doing loads of things online, but most of his audience are our age, like late teens, early 20s, or doing degrees. They're not younger people. And I imagine most of the audience for ecological psychology will be older people, but if it gets into the philosophy tube space, I wasn't going to use them as a reference, but philosophy tube is rolled off the tongue. The philosophy YouTube space now using the various communities of categorization, they may find a younger audience. Finding a younger audience with ecological psychology is what's exciting to me.
That'd be so cool.
So let's avoid Turvey's lectures.
Maybe.
Have you read Turvey's
Maybe.
lectures?
No.
Turvey's
I
lectures on
don't have
perception.
enough time to read the lectures. I have children.
Yeah. They are the lectures that Julia and Jeff warned us about.
Mm.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Julia and Jeff warned us about the lectures being very dense and
Yes.
complex.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah,
Did you get those?
I've read the first three.
Okay.
Yep, yep. I mean, they're They're not hard reads, but I think
Mm.
that's because I've been doing this for almost, well, over a decade now. Uh,
Yeah.
so I'm very familiar with the jargon, the terminology, the concepts, the ideas. So I am fairly experienced. I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I'm experienced. I have expertise.
Mm.
But even with some of the words, I need to look at a bit of reference material to grasp what it is that he's making. And again, that's going to also be on the channel at some point.
Cool. Good. I'll wait for you.
Danny, you do that. Danny, do that and then explain it to me so I don't have to read these words and look at dictionaries.
That's pretty much my experience.
I don't want to have to eat a thesaurus to understand what you're
No,
writing.
no.
But unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, deliberately, ecological psychology is that complex because humans and organisms are complex. And in
True.
order to gather specific meanings behind words, you need complex explanations. One add one equals two. Why? Massive whiteboard or chalkboard of mathematical calculations and proofs, but we all know that one add one equals two. So you want the one add one equals two, not the whiteboards and chalkboards of mathematical explanations.
Yes, please. Thank you.
I will try.
And then I'll get really intrigued and start looking at the mathematical calculations behind why.
Yeah, don't. It's not math.
No, just no. Just don't no. Just no. Just no.
Put it
It's
this
so
way.
fun. I do adore the difference of experiences because I send my article, which is designed to be Gen Pop readable-ish, as Gen Pop as you can get with the ecological approach, but still, and still, I just it's taking me a while to read this, and I'm like, mm, mm, okay, still,
Yeah.
and
With
then I look at, and then I look at, and look at what we read, or what you read, and then I read a bit later on and go, hmm,
I'll wait for Danny to have a conversation with me about this.
well, yeah,
Joe, my rule of thumb with math, if there are more symbols than numbers, it's not math. And if there are more equal symbols than the other symbols, and the other symbols look like Greek letters, then it's physics. And if it's physics, I don't want anything to do with it.
so here's an interesting question.
Yes,
How much do you need to live ecologically?
none of it, because you already do.
I know that is exactly where I was, and I'm like, I don't need any, which is why I stopped really deeply engaging in the conversations.
I've changed my mind. You already do live ecologically because it's an explanation to human behavior and organisms, but we're specifically speaking about humans right now. So
Hmm.
you don't need any explanations for your behavior. However, if you have struggles, problems,
Hmm.
issues, and you're trying
Hmm.
to find solutions to those problems and are struggling to find solutions because of your constrained view of the answers,
Ah, yes,
then ecological psychology may be not needed, but helpful. And I feel that's where a lot of people are. They
yes,
live ecologically. You can explain their behaviors ecologically. I'll give you an
yeah,
example of that in a minute. You can explain behaviors ecologically, but if people are using other assumptions to explain behaviors and it's causing a problem, or there are problems that are struggling, or there are problems that people are struggling to solve using traditional explanations through cognitive psychology, potentially due to the assumptions they have about the way humans behave in the world, then ecological psychology becomes useful.
yeah.
Experience from yesterday. We were at the swimming pool, Deaf Children's Society. We were doing a swimming pool event. And I was having a conversation with a person, and they were talking about a child that's at school, and they have this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing wrong with them, and they have behavior problems at school. Uh, I'm just making sure that I'm not breaching GDPR. Yes, I'm fine. So, autism, PDA, deaf. Uh, do you know what PDA is?
Pathological demand avoidance.
Yeah. So PDA, autism, what that means, I don't know. It was just autism and then PDA and then deaf. So they struggle hearing, obviously. And the story, just one story I'll use here, is they assaulted the head teacher. And then the story carried on. But my question was, what did the teacher do? And the person I was talking to was really confused. They were like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Well, the teacher did something." Well, no, that's how they were acting. They were behaving. They do it all the time. Yeah, but what did the teacher do? Well, they just stopped them. But how did they stop them? What did they do? Did they ask the person to stop doing something? How did they ask the person to stop doing something? Did they physically pull them away? What did the head teacher do? And they said, "Oh, I don't know. The head teacher just said that the child assaulted them." That right there is a problem caused by cognitive psychology assumptions, in my view.
Yeah.
You're assuming the child understands what is going on.
Yeah.
Then you are interacting with them in a way that they potentially don't like, probably don't like, and so they are going to act in a way that keeps themselves safe, which, if their only solution is to hit the person grabbing them, then that's an understandable response. If the way the question is worded or the way the communication is put across to a deaf person, if you're shouting at them, they can see you shouting. They can see the aggressive nature of your face. So
Mm.
if they are perceiving the head teacher as being aggressive towards them, a natural response, if you're not trained to do other things, if you haven't practiced or experienced other things, is to be aggressive back. This person is a young boy, a young child, boy assigned at birth. I assume they identify as boy. I recognize boy gender, young person, and they become aggressive. And to me, that is a
And
huge
also,
frustration. Yeah.
in amongst that is hormones
Mhm.
and growing up and trying to just exist in the world that
They're either
that
at the end of primary or the beginning of secondary. I'm not sure.
but but still that can happen early.
Mm.
There is some studies, limited studies, that actually people
Early
with that,
maturation.
yeah, they just, yeah, they mature.
And
Yeah.
something that I found really interesting later on, relating to the same situation, or same people, different situation, is this person, this boy at school, was asked to look after two other deaf children that were younger than them. So we have this person that has been kicked out of school for poor behavior, that is deaf, autistic, PDA, struggles with communication, struggles with behavior in school, has been asked, has been given the responsibility to look after these younger children. Fine with it. Why is he fine with it? Because he understands there is an intention. Education of attention, education of attention and intention. He understands what his job is, the goal, the behavior, what the point is. And he has experiences with problems and can help those experiencing those problems.
Mm.
So they are a competent individual. They are a self-organizing, competent individual that is in a situation where other individuals are not helping.
And often this is the lived experience of the label of neurodiverse individuals. They are incredibly attuned to self-organization. Like they just do it. If you look at
We,
all the symptoms, well, yeah, we all just do it. If we look at the symptoms of ADHD in particular, where you go from one task to another task to another task, where you look this way, where you have these bins, where you have these things, and it's like that is that is self-organizing.
that's
Like that is just
perception.
That is just literally exactly what I. And then, if, for example, you put things down and forget where they are, okay, fine. But I'm not remembering where every single little thing that I put down is.
That's
Like,
why that's why we look. That's why we don't put something down, look forwards, and then just move our arm to exactly where the thing was. We look because we perceive and act together. Who would have thought it?
I know.
Well,
But it's really interesting because I watch the experience of people that I know, and they're like, "Oh, I can't find something." Okay, have you looked? Yeah. Okay, cool. What can you see? Like, well, there isn't. I can't. Where is it? I don't know where it is. Okay, what have you done? Where have you looked? How have you looked? Do you remember where you last saw it? Oh, no, I don't remember any of these things. And there is an expectation of just being told where things are. Like someone else just knows. Well, I always forget this. Well, I never know this. Well, I never. Well, I never. I'm like, we're giving up.
they've paid attention to specific points in time. They're paying attention to specific measures rather than the ongoing perception of living organisms. And something that I find interesting, I'm going to share this experience. When you were talking just then,
Yeah.
I was listening, so I'm paying attention, but I'm also paying attention to other things at the same time. Because when you said find, I was thinking about three other experiences. So I'm in the present and in the three different pasts and my future all at the same time because I was thinking about a lesson I had had, or a conversation I'd had, which was framed as a lesson learning BSL. Then I was thinking about the experience I'd had practicing the signs after that. Then the experience yesterday of being reminded of the sign because I couldn't think of the sign while I was communicating. I remembered it as I was doing. And when you said the word find, I thought about all three of those situations, all three of those experiences, and me now doing find because I've just signed find. So I thought about doing the sign in the future whilst having experienced it three times in the past, fairly recently, that's all within the week, whilst listening to you still talk.
It's so cool.
That how do you explain that in cognitive psychology? I am perceiving four different timescales at the same time, overlapping timescales.
I know. So
Ecological
cool.
psychology gives you language to
Cool.
explain these things.
So cool. It's so it's like that right there is the fundamental thing why I love it, why I kept going, why I went through what I went through with trying to understand it and being confused and being stuck and being like,
Hopefully, we can help other people.
yeah, because that is the exciting part of like once you find that, and just even from like what I was working on with what if executive dysfunction isn't actually real. Because if it isn't, and the assumptions attached to that,
What's interesting to me about those terms is executive function in cognitive psychology is described as essentially behavior, because without executive function, we can't behave. Because
mm,
executive function is remembering, it's perceiving, it's acting, it's all the processing that our brain is doing to get us to move.
yes,
So, executive function, if we use a little bit of algebraic math here, executive function
oh,
equals behavior.
mm,
Because without executive function, we can't
can't
behave.
behave. So, in other words, when you say executive dysfunction, where you are unable to function, then you see, like, because
But but
literal,
but we don't not behave.
yeah,
We don't not behave. We're
mm,
still behaving.
not possible to not behave. We just do.
Well, unless you're dead.
Well, yeah, assuming that we're all alive and breathing right now.
But
But
there's an
even
implicit assumption with what it is that we're talking about.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
even if you have physical disabilities, being half blind, half deaf, like you have that, like that they are d physical disabilities, but we can still behave just slightly differently to someone else. But at the same time, we're still behaving. So...
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm now going to be evil.
Oh, lovely.
You said physical.
Oh, I know I did. Yeah.
And through the last couple of weeks, I've been consuming lots of content about mental health, mental training.
Yeah.
And there is a difference in sport fields. You've got a strength and conditioning coach for the physical side and a psychologist for
Mm.
the mental side.
Mm.
Well, that dualism in ecological psychology is rejected. It's rejected. We're organisms.
Mm.
So how would you describe being half blind and half deaf? Is that a physical disability?
No, they're just the things I can do, the capabilities that I have. So action capabilities would probably be the term. It's just a constraint I have.
So the action capabilities are what? Because birds have different action capabilities to fish,
Mm.
to dogs, to cats, to humans. So would we say a dog is disabled when compared to a human? Like, I don't
No,
think so.
no. Although I suppose you could say that now.
But this is what I mean when we're talking about disability and physical and mental disability. If it instead is action capabilities, we all have vision, but we all have different vision.
Mm.
And the different vision allows us to be better or worse in different situations. For example, I found this the other day. Because I can't see in my right out of my right eye very well at all, I pay a lot of attention through my left side. And something happened on my left side, and I reacted to it. The person opposite me, it was their right side, has two working eyes. They didn't react to the thing. And I found that interesting. And I, they said, oh, I didn't see that. But they did see that because their small reaction was like a little flinch, but they didn't really notice the flinch. I saw the flinch, so they flinched away from. I think it was a person waving their arm, or maybe a ball flying across. Something happened this side, um, and I put my arm out, and they flinched. So they saw it, but they didn't acknowledge too much that they saw it, and I paid attention to that more than they did. To me, I could describe that as as an advantage. If it happened on the other side, definitely disadvantage. I probably wouldn't have reacted and hit me in the face. Uh, but in that situation, I have a potential advantage.
Yeah.
And with hearing, sleep. I mean, I have more advantages with my hearing stuff because I've been living half deaf, like growing up. I can sleep on my good ear and not hear anything else. Other people can't do that because they can hear through both ears and they get woken up by snoring, and I don't. No, no. I win on that one. So, action capabilities instead of disabilities, because disabilities requires a comparison to collective norms.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking about the video introduction video and the categorizations. Maybe that goes in that section.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna write that down as well. I'm writing out my script as we're going through this podcast. So I'm certainly benefiting from this.
Good.
Um,
Me too. I'm getting more and more ideas for content myself.
well, that is why I'm writing it down because I know after this I'm going to go out and then after that I will probably have a couple of conversations and by the time I come back I will need to re-experience or go through the experience of paying attention to pieces of information. And I don't want to have to do that. I want to be able to just write, which is why I'm
Yeah.
writing things down to speed up the process of recall. Ugh, the word
Ugh.
recall. Not recall as in I'm recalling something from my stored memory, but recall as in I want to recall past experiences.
No, it's all stored. We have it. Would you like a? Why don't you just unplug your memory card?
Oh yeah, wait. I just get. I'll put a new SD card in. Yeah, just increase the RAM.
Just some more
Increase.
ramen,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
fine.
Increase the memory in my brain. Yep. I mean, we kind of do that. We are kind of robots in a way, because like hearing cochlear implants, you can put like cochlear implants on you to get your hearing back, and then with the eyes, you've got the cyborgs that use vision and chips and stuff in their arms. So there is it there. What's it called? Ah, I can't remember the field. Uh, uh, yeah, it is like humanism.
Cybernetics?
Nah, humanism is the end of it. I can't remember. I can't remember.
Oh no, you can't remember. That means you can't find it now because it's gone forever because like you don't have good memory.
I will eventually. I will eventually remember, but yeah. I will need to search for information.
No, you can't do that. If you can't remember something, you just can't do it.
Um, this is. I literally just searched up robot humanism. I can't remember the field. You see, this is one of those things where I know the meaning and I can explain the meaning, but the social construct of a word, the language of the word is the problem. See, as I'm going through this, I'm remembering lots of other situations where it's been put up. So I'm gonna now go onto YouTube and see if I can find it there. What are your thoughts on robots and humans while I'm looking for this?
That is such a delightfully broad place to start. I like the idea. It's cool. It's fun. It's sci-fi, but also not sci-fi. I like sci-fi. I've been playing Cyberpunk, so which is always fun.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I'm struggling to find the. Ooh, is that it? Nope. That's a big think video. It's not what I'm looking for. I can't see again, like names. Why do I need to remember names of people? Is it Sabrina? Hoffenheim? Something like that. See, I'm really bad at remembering names, is what I would say a lot. Um, they have a big YouTube channel.
That's your executive dysfunction there.
It could be explained through executive dysfunction. The uh, oh, getting rid of the fluff. Let's just oh. Is it that one? No, it's not that one. Uh,
But
removing the
what about that one
thrust.
made you think it was that one?
It began with an S. Ah, um,
Welcome to the podcast where we research live.
yeah. Well, this is interesting because I'm going through the process of remembering. I'm perceiving lots of other information, and while I'm doing this, I'm remembering people that have spoken about this, conversations that have spoken about this, while I'm trying to work out what this word is. So I am learning through the perception of trying to work out what this word is. Um, did I just? I see. Okay. What I just did is typed a word out that I thought might be accurate, but I had no idea whether it was or not. Where did the word come from? I don't know. It emerged. I typed in transhumanism. That's the word that I was trying to find. Transhumanism.
Cool.
Ugh. So yes, because transhumanism relates to anyone shifting the natural biology of organisms. But that is literally like you put caffeine in your body, it's a drug.
Yeah.
And that's where the line, some people draw the line at different places. I class coffee as a drug, or caffeine as a drug. Some people don't. And what's funny about this situation is I was thinking about See, I don't even remember the name of the person that I was thinking about because I don't know what the person's name was because I didn't get there because that wasn't the goal. But Philosophy Tube came up with the answer. So the channel that I was looking for hasn't come up yet um, as a suggested channel, but the other channel that I also watched the video of has come up, and you can see me scrolling. I know. Uh, YouTube search is so much worse because it keeps suggesting me videos. And I'm like, no, that's not what I typed in. I'm looking for the thing that I typed in. Just give me the
Mm.
search results, please. Uh, but yeah, no, I can't find them. But that's fine because that's not what I was looking for in the first place. I was looking for transhumanism. But yeah, I think that's been a productive conversation, don't you?
Oh yes, yes, as always.
So what content, where is your content? Is it a Substack? Is it just an email
It
list?
is a
Is it,
Substack, so it's Substack, and that's the main place where I'm doing the content.
where are you having the conversations? Do you continue them or?
Yeah, continue them. I have a Substack chat, which is available to everybody, so anyone who wants to have conversations. I have conversations on Blue Sky and Facebook mainly, if for social conversations that are outside of Substack,
So which
and
one's
in
the
my
most
email.
active? Because I want to get involved.
Um, they're all pretty the same at the moment. Facebook was the one with the comment, so Facebook probably
Okay.
on my
So
personal.
you can direct me to the Facebook afterwards, and then we can continue the conversation because I want to have more of these conversations with everyday people, not just people in BJJ or in the constraints-led approach or highly academic ecological psychologists.
Yeah, yeah.
I love you people, but I want to speak to some normal people as well. That when I say affordance, don't get really excited. That's how I describe a normal person now. If I say affordance to you and you don't get really excited, you're a normal person. So if I say affordance or attenuation, you go, "Oh yeah, let's talk." You're weird, like me.
Pretty much.
Right. Thanks everyone for listening.